We're here today to talk about the Replenish Writing Workshop will be beginning in January 7th, a 4-week workshop. And it's a writing and transformation sampler, which means you're going to get a smorgasbord of different writing and healing topics. And we're very excited about this. And I know for myself, and intersecting with Karen, that we both started writing for emotional healing very early on. Do you want to say something about your journey, Karen?
Oh, yes. I was a child artist, and at 14, my parents were having a particularly difficult divorce, and I turned to words. And once I fell into poetry, there was no coming back. Poetry gave me a way to sort out what was truly happening, what was mine, what was not mine. And then, of course, as I grew up and going through 3 childbirths and raising children and living in a community and finding my calling and deepening all of that, I wrote and wrote and wrote. And I especially wrote through my 2 journeys through cancer. Writing is such an important way to grapple with our lives and our bodies as we age and change. What about you, Joy?
You know, I was introduced to poetry and writing by my third grade teacher. And I knew I wanted to be a writer, and I've written poetry ever since. I was 8, and that happened to be the year that both Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert Kennedy were assassinated. And for some reason, I took on that cultural pain. I couldn't stop writing about it. And so that began the process of having, writing about the emotions you feel as an adolescent, moving into college, all the difficult times I dealt with as I grew into adulthood. And gradually it became even more about joyful things, which is something I've learned about writing and healing, that it's not just writing about difficult times or trauma, but it's also about capturing moments of pleasure and joy. And that will be sort of the focus of my first class, which is writing for emotional health. We'll talk about both sides, the balance of that.
The second session will be on writing from the body. Sometimes when we think about writing, we treat it as if it's just a frontal lobe download endeavor to our computers. But actually, the strongest and most powerful writing, the writing that heals our lives and gives us direction, is from all of us. So, writing in dialogue with our bodies to hear what we have to say to ourselves, what perhaps has not been said before, what stories we are living, body and soul, and how we might revise those stories for our health and our well being is something so essential to our evolving self care, which I tend to look at as a part time job in middle age that becomes full time as we get older.
Yes, I'm going to be focusing on writing through transitions and difficult times. And this really has to do with the age of the pandemic and some of
Mhm.
the things I've learned about the shifts we've had to make, the shifts we'll make in the future, ways to kind of ground ourselves, like with different maybe job transitions or relational transitions or
Mhm.
anything that's gone on in our life where there's been some kind of passage, or we're going through a very difficult time. And I know that that is true of so many of us with
Mhm.
fears, with decisions, with choices. So I'll be focusing on that and using writing as a way to move through some of those passages of life. And
I'm so
I'm
glad that
excited about your last class, which is a topic I think a lot of people will be interested in.
it's interesting that you talk about the changes and transitions during the pandemic, because one thing I've experienced in my life, and I've noticed in many of the people I love who I hear from regularly, is that although we can't jump on a plane and visit each other or even hug one another up close, although our lives are restricted and in so many ways although a lot of us have been balancing or tunneling through fear, despair, especially anxiety, uncertainty. The one thing that we can do, and many of us have focused on, is becoming more aware of who and where we are. Almost everyone I know noticed so much more in the spring, the summer, the fall, and now in the winter. A lot of us are outside more, or we're just finding other ways to open our peripheral vision. And the practice of writing is a practice of continually arriving where we are.
I hope that you'll join us beginning January 7th for 4 weeks. That's a Thursday. Our class will be in the evening, 6:30 Mountain Standard Time, 7:30 Central Standard Time. So if you're Pacific or Eastern, you can figure that out. We would love to have you. I think it's going to be a very special experience. And Karen, I can't wait for us to do this together. Visit our website, createandreplenish.com, and you can save your spot today.